here in Machakos County. Cheaper alternatives for feed. On this, I want to be very categorical. You know, sometimes the truth is bitter, but what can you do if you want to get your project right? What are some of the cheaper options of feed? People have been mentioning so much about black soldier fly. Black soldier fly is good. I can't dispute it. My colleague, actually my classmate at Masters, was doing a research on black soldier fly as an inclusion for broiler feeds. When you're doing poultry farming, you as a farmer and I as your teacher, we are not researchers. This is not a laboratory. Your farm is not a laboratory for doing research. Your farm is a business. You know, you're here to do business. Do your business and move on. Instead, use the research that has been used by other people to implement on your farm and do it. And just work on. Ask yourself, why don't commercial feed producers use BSF, that is black soldier fly, for feed formulation? Ask yourself, why don't they do that? If you are doing commercial layers, from experience, if you are doing broiler chicken production, from experience, black soldier fly, no. No. Here, we are looking at the feed conversion ratio. How much feed is going to be used to produce 2 units of eggs? Okay? We are looking, when you look at egg mass, all right? When you look at egg count, when you look at hen day, how much feed of layers mash am I going to feed to my chicken from week 5 to week 7 to gain 6 tissues, okay, to gain 6 units of tissue? That's now what we look at FCR, feed conversion ratio. When you look at that, and then black soldier fly does not come in, honestly. Black soldier fly can only be used as a cheaper feed alternative for kienyeji birds or for the indigenous improved birds. That one with black soldier fly, go for it. When you talk about commercial layers, when you talk about broilers, at this point, it's quite tricky. I look at coccidia as being the main problem in chicken production. Coccidiosis, basically, coccidiosis. What are some of the intermediate medias of transmission of coccidiosis? Research on it, you'll give me the answer. And so, if you want to use black soldier fly as a cheaper feed alternative, use it as an inclusion or a supplement for the indigenous improved birds. That one will work well. But for the commercial layers and broilers, you cannot use it as an inclusion. When I say as an inclusion, I mean you cannot use it as part of the ration. You can only use it as a supplement. After you've given the birds their correct daily required ration. If the bird is supposed to eat 100 grams per day, first feed it on 100 grams per day, then you can supplement with BSF, black soldier fly. Mostly for broilers, not for layers. Because if you overfeed a layer bird, it gains too much weight, it increases the fat deposits, and the opposite is true for egg production. AfriChick is all about maximizing the number of eggs you can get in a day. Maximizing the weight that your bird can gain in a day. Okay? The second option I've been seeing people give you is sorghum. Sorghum is a good, cheaper option of feed if you can get it cheaply from your locality. But then, this is where the trick comes in. Which type of sorghum are you using to supplement your feeds? For millet, you can use any as a supplement or as an inclusion, whatever. But for sorghum, you have to be specific and use the white sorghum. We use the white sorghum. If you use the red sorghum, it has got some anti-nutritive factors, okay? And therefore, it quickly makes some nutrients not available to your bird for absorption and conversion into eggs or tissue. or meat in a layman's language. So we use sorghum mostly as a replacement or a substitute for wheat, but it's white sorghum. I don't object that. It's only the type of sorghum you ought to use. Some of these things are very easy, or some of these things are very boring. They're very cheap, but they really impact on your production. Assume you have 10,000 birds and you're losing your production by 2% simply because of using the wrong sorghum. 2% of 10,000 birds is how much? That's around 200 eggs. How much is 200 eggs in your country? That is money. If you take 200 times 30 days, you are losing 6,000 eggs. That is quite a good amount of money to even pay the laborers. Okay? The other thing that I've had people talk of mostly as a cheaper alternative or source of feed is the hydroponics. You know, where you'll take sorghum or you'll take wheat, then you plant it in a container or a trough, then they sprout, and you use the sprouts as a source of protein to the birds. It's not a bad alternative of feed alternative, but this is only applicable for profitability purposes to Kenya's improved birds. For commercial layers, for broilers, no. If you look at the FCR of a feed with an inclusion of the hydroponics, to me it's quite low compared to just using a universal feed, a common layers mash or a common pellets mash or a crumbs mash. Okay? Some of these inclusions, most of these inclusions actually are still under research, and like I mentioned in the introductory statement, let us not use our farms for research purposes, but let's use our farms for making money. Go to the laboratories, go to the libraries, go to the archives, read the research that people have done, and look at the most suitable research and use it for implementation. Make your money this year and do another project next year. Okay? So most of these cheaper alternatives are mostly applicable to the improved indigenous birds. We talk about leftovers as also a cheaper source or a cheaper means of feeding chicken. Leftovers are good, but they're only applicable again to indigenous improved birds. If you have feed that has got too much rice as leftover, you can't use it to feed the layers, because rice is very good for fat deposition, because too much carbohydrate deposition is converted into fat. So this one helps or increases gaining weight of the layers, and by that there's decline in egg production or decline in egg count. Remember, we always look on cheaper feeds for layers that can maintain the weight and maintain the production. For broilers, leftovers could do a little bit. That has got much rice leftovers. But because we are doing business, when you're not taking chances, you know, leftovers will come in, they're not very well handled. I usually find them to have so much coccidia or cholera and like that. Give that to improved indigenous birds. It will do well for them. But for broilers and layers, like I always maintain, these ones we need to do everything to, make everything perfect. Don't bring in outside sources of feed or outside handlers. Basically, material from outside in terms of feed that will bring in contamination. Because this is something that an egg every day. Anything that will make us not have an egg every day, feed leftovers, give it to the improved indigenous birds. But for broilers and layers, just avoid that. We can use rice as a substitute for corn or maize and even wheat, but then this one you need to be very well versed with feed formulation, because rice is very prone to much weight gain, just like I mentioned before, in terms of it being used as a leftover, even if it's also crushed in its raw form and given to the chicken. Substituting maize or substituting wheat, you have to be very careful with the levels of inclusions so that you don't have too much weight gain, especially in broilers. in layers, sorry. But in broilers, it can do quite well. Somebody asked me, this is just a by the way, on what can he use as a substitute for fish meal. In my next video, I will handle that in terms of substitute for proteins, that is soya, and substitutes for, that's plant protein, and substitutes for animal protein, that is fish meal. I will handle that at length, and I hope I'll answer your question. Cheers. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and share as much as you can.